Welcome to Silicon Dragon Talk. My name is Rebecca Fannin. I'm the host of the show. Today we're going to be talking about China innovation and how it plays out globally into this new Silicon Dragon Valley. And today we have three guests who are going to be joining us to talk about these trends. We have Tung from GGV Capital, Eric Feng from Flipboard China, and also Geoff Yang from Redpoint. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rebecca.
So today I'd like to start off with a topic which has been on my mind a lot since we're seeing so much technology activity, so many venture capital investments, so many IPOs. Do you think we're in a tech bubble or are we on the verge of a tech revolution? What do you think, Hans?
Well, I was here in 2000 briefly before heading to Asia. You look at a number of metrics, it is at about 2000 level in terms of real estate prices, in terms of traffic, in terms of funding level, where NASDAQ is, et cetera, et cetera. However, back then, the internet user base worldwide is roughly about 100 million. Now, between China and US alone, you have 1 billion smartphones. China alone has 600 million internet users. So yes, the valuation is extremely high, but I think there's a ways to go. And if Alibaba does IPO, they will have $50 billion to spend. The valuation will go out even more. If I'm a betting man, which I'm not, I probably will hold some asset now and sell in the next 12 to 18 months and then wait for correction and buy some more.
So what about you, Eric? Are you betting on this?
I, at my core, am an optimist. And the thing that I'm most excited by, also as an engineer, is the pace of innovation has exploded exponentially as the cost has gone down by orders of magnitude as well. And when you combine that, it is such a ripe environment for amazing things to be built. I'll give you two quick examples of two companies that I had a chance to be involved with. The first was back at Microsoft. I worked on SQL Server, which took about 2 years to ship, about 900 people, and roughly $100 million to launch that product. And it was a really great piece of innovation at that time, and it led to a fantastic business for Microsoft. But 10 years later, I was at Hulu. And when we launched the first version of Hulu, it took us 84 days, 30 people, and less than $5 million. So just the order of magnitude changes in cost, improvements in time, improvements in efficiency have been tremendous. And that curve has only continued to increase. So I think as you've made it easier for people to build great things, they're going to continue to build even better things. And that's what gives me a lot of optimism for this market.
Okay, so renaissance or revolution?
Well, I mean, I guess from my point of view, I've got a couple points to make. The first is that I think bubble is a charged word because it implies something that's going to burst. But having said that, I think there are two things. The nature of your question is really twofold, right? One is about the pace of innovation and will that continue? And the second is about valuations. Let me just start with the pace of innovations and the expanding market. It's a remarkable time right now. People think about the tech business generally about increasing penetration into bigger markets, and they talk about replacement cycle and all that. I think that's definitely true. The technology business as we know it is expanding. But the thing that people don't really think that much about is the fact that it may be technology is taking a bigger piece of a lot of the existing offline businesses that it really didn't have a piece in before. For instance, you look at Uber and it's really taking a bite into the transportation market, or you look at some of the delivery services and they're taking market share and revenues away from traditional offline businesses, or you look at something. We're an investor in a company called HomeJoy, which is trying to revolutionize cleaning services and home services, and that really wasn't a quote-unquote tech market. And I think when you look at that market is measured in hundreds of billions of dollars. And so you've got a robust existing technology business as people usually describe it, but you've got this giant market that it's really going into. So I think the fundamentals are extremely powerful and extremely strong. Whether or not it's a valuation bubble, I mean, valuations go up, they go down. I'm sure they're high and they'll go down, but I'm sure they'll go up over the long term because the fundamentals are good. So I think it's hard to answer this really easy question to ask if it's a bubble, and because you got to decompose it into the component parts.
Is there any sector of the economy that's not impacted by technology innovation today? We've seen Internet of Things, we've seen cloud computing, we've seen big data, we've seen healthcare. You brought up transportation, education. Is there
Sure.
any sector that's not impacted today?
Smokestack manufacturing. I mean, there are a lot of segments where it isn't really, it's impacting on the periphery, but for there are enough really big markets that technology is making a meaningful impact because people are walking around with a computer in their pocket with a high-speed network connected to it and a cloud infrastructure that allows you to do a lot of really exciting things.
So Eric, you were involved with social media. Is social media going to continue to revolutionize and change and impact society, or are other things, other areas going to be more exciting going forward?
Social media is certainly a very transformative thing that we've all had the fortune to witness and live through over the last few years. And I view social networking as truly word of mouth at scale. The best information, the most meaningful connections are often done via word of mouth, and social networking allows that phenomenon to happen at scale, whether you're trying to communicate personal news or whether you're trying to deliver a marketing message, and that's incredibly powerful. It's just tapping on this theme overall of technology making people, their ideas, what they're trying to achieve, far more efficient. And I think that while social networking is incredibly interesting, there are certainly a lot of other things that are very interesting during this period right now. One that I'm very passionate about is the intersection of media and technology, and how technology has really transformed the media business over the last decade. A couple of the companies I've had the pleasure of being involved with, Hulu and Flipboard, have really been at that intersection, right at the core of it. And I think that the biggest thing that technology can do for media is to make it far more accessible. And we just fundamentally believe at Flipboard and also back at Hulu that if you make things easier to be consumed, you will have more consumption. And that will ultimately lead to great things. So I'm just very excited to see that happen and have technology make media far more accessible and far more convenient for users.
Yeah, I think we're talking in part about the mobile communications boom, and I know that that's an area that GGV and Hans, you've invested a lot in. Do you see that going forward as one of the big high-impact areas?
Oh, absolutely. I went to China in 2005, and back then, eBay was the largest e-commerce company in China, and now it's Alibaba with more GMV than eBay and Amazon combined worldwide. And they're mostly in China just today as a GG portfolio company. But over the next 10 years, you can tell companies like that and more companies like Alibaba out of China will have a lot more global businesses. And then mobile will be a key reason why you can do that. In the PC internet era, every time you want to expand geography-wise, it takes a lot of time to build a website, get traffic, get user traction. In mobile internet, once your app's approved by Google Play or App Store from Apple, you can quickly roll out to other countries. And that's not possible before. So you will see companies that have built up interesting business models from their own large domestic market be able to be ready for expansion on a global basis. And they are, almost every major country, you'll see two worlds, the offline world and the internet world. The internet world is increasingly taking a bite of the offline world because of mobile.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned China, so I'd like to have your view on where you see China innovation. Is the market really moving from copying, which it started out as, to innovating today?
Right.
And what are the examples of some innovations that are coming out of China today that are now being copied in the US?
Well, over the last 10 years, the playbook for Chinese internet space, both in terms of investing and also starting new companies, has been copying a model that's working in the US and then localized for China. Increasingly, the localized portion of the development has gotten so big that become a micro innovation of its own. When I got back to the US about 8 months ago, it was kind of obvious that for US, internet advertising is the easiest way to the most ready way to monetize traffic. But in China, because internet advertising market is quite relatively small compared to what's in the US, there are two models that are very popular. One's the e-commerce marketplace model or the affiliate model that drive traffic to another website for final transaction, or build a marketplace of your own on your own app where the transaction happen within your own marketplace, and you recruit suppliers to come out to your own marketplace to sell, but you don't take any inventory risk. And the other model is the virtual currency, virtual item model, where the user directly pay for a virtual item for entertainment value. And in most of the markets around the world, users behave a bit more like the DLC mass market users in China versus urban sophisticated users in the US, in New York, LA, and San Francisco. So you can see some of the business models that work for mass market users, DLC users in China to be more replicable, expandable to the rest of the world. So that's why you see UC Web as the #1 mobile browser in India. This is why you see Xiaomi as the fastest growing phone brand in Southeast Asia, not just in China, where I've been fortunate to be a serious investor. We see more examples like that coming out of China. And I think having made investments in something like Wish or Curse, they're taking some of the models that work in Chinese e-commerce space or virtual item space and expand that to US and the rest of the world.
Geoff, what do you think? Can China compete with Silicon Valley?
Oh yeah, in fact, I think one of the issues that, or one of the deficiencies of some of the Valley companies are they tend to be a little bit myopic. The U.S. has always been, historically been kind of the innovators market and kind of the highest monetization market, kind of the crown jewel. But I think that, and as a result, the companies here really focus on the other companies here. Facebook's worried about what Google is doing, or Twitter's worried about what Facebook is doing. And I don't think they quite give enough credibility, or rather paranoia, to what some of these China internet companies are doing. When the fact of the matter is 3 of the top 10 market cap companies are Chinese-based companies. You're about to have a 4th one probably sometime after Labor Day, when Alibaba comes as potentially the largest tech IPO in U.S. history. And what has happened is, historically, as Hans was just mentioning, these companies went after the local domestic China market. Increasingly, they have larger international ideals. You see them starting to expand to Latin America or other developing markets for growth. But I am 100% confident that they view the U.S. market as kind of the crown jewel. And I would not be surprised. And almost all the major platform companies in China are establishing U.S. presence or U.S. investment arms. And I think it's going to be kind of inevitable that some of the primary competitors that today I don't think the U.S. companies give enough paranoia or credibility toward are going to be the China companies. You look at WeChat as an example with almost 400 million users, and you look at the experience, and I think they kind of looked at what Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and WhatsApp, what was working, and they kind of pulled it all together in kind of a next generation experience. 400 million is a lot of users, especially at the rate they're growing, and most of those are domestic Chinese users. But I think in 6 or 12 months you're going to look back and say, wow, that's extraordinary growth, and I think the writing's on the wall on that.
Yeah, I have some slides I'd like to show that document the rise of China's innovation going forward, talking about the time when Sand Hill Road began to invest in China. Many of the leading venture capital firms went to China, such as Kleiner, Sequoia, Draper, and NEA.
And Redpoint.
And Redpoint, of course. There was an incredible flood of capital going into the market. And then there was a bit of a backlash in about 2011. It's begun to recover again now. U.S. has pretty much remained steady, but China has been on this cycle, ups and downs. If you look at the number of patents from China, China's rise has just been incredible, going from 6th from just a few years ago now to 3rd in the market globally. And the number of companies from China that are leading this patent parade, ZTE and Huawei ranked 2nd and 3rd, and Huawei was the leading one just a few years ago. Of course, the U.S. it still stacks up there. I think if you look at the IPOs, again, very cyclical. China's making a comeback this year. There are a number of China IPOs on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. Of course, Alibaba is the one that everyone's anticipating, coming up very soon. And if you look at the roots of China's tech revolution, we talked about the internet market, the world's largest internet market, 4 of the top 10 websites, world's largest mobile internet market. The market opportunity is just enormous. And I'd like to ask Eric how Flipboard is tackling the China market. You're really making a concerted effort to go in and make a difference and customize the product. And tell me how that's going. How so many of the American brands didn't do that well in China, so Flipboard sounds like it's got a good start. Tell us about it.
Well, it's interesting because this wave of, you mentioned cyclical patterns, this wave of activity and interest in China, I think it's very different than it was 5 years ago. I think 5 years ago, companies were pushing into China for no good reason, other than it's a big opportunity, let's go there. But this current wave, I think companies are actually getting pulled into China. And that's what happened at Flipboard. We didn't necessarily wake up one day and say, China is the right strategy, we have to go and tackle it. We actually woke up one day and just saw that we had a lot of users in China through who knows why, but it happened. And we were so excited to see that happen that at that point we really wanted to focus on it. So I really think that in this cyclical wave, it's been the Chinese market that has pulled companies, Flipboard, LinkedIn, Airbnb, companies that are really starting to focus on the China market in because they just have users there. They're really embracing the product and starting to engage with it. And at Flipboard, China has gone in the last 24 months or so from a top 10 market to our number 2 market. It is second only to the US and is one of our fastest growing markets. And been incredibly excited to see that happen. And the strategy that we're taking with China is really 3 things. The first is that we recognize that the market is so big. It is so big that it's okay to be second, third, fourth, fifth, and still build a meaningful, very, very meaningful business there. Whereas kind of in the US, when I put on my old VC hat, if you can't be number 1 in the market, then you need to find another market, or that kind of mentality. In China, it's not quite the same because the market opportunity is just so big that as long as you can develop a great product and resonate with users, then it is something worth pursuing. The second is that we don't want to go at China alone. We think that China is such a unique opportunity, and there are a lot of great local companies that are experts in understanding that market. We really want to find world-class people to partner with. So we've been very fortunate to get to work with Renren and Tencent and Sina Weibo and local publishers in China and really partner together to bring innovation into the market. That's been incredibly key for us. And then the last thing is that for China, we've really felt that it was important to have a local presence there. It was important to adopt the local customs, to really bring the local insights and expertise and talent into the company. So we actually have a R&D center in China. It is our second largest R&D center outside of Palo Alto, where Flipboard is headquartered. We have about 10 people there now already and quickly growing. And we want to continue to invest in the talent and have them really bring their expertise, their values, and their culture into the company to help us be successful in the market. So those are 3 tactics that we've really embraced as we've started to focus more on China.
Great. Where's the R&D center?
It's in Beijing. Yeah.
Great. Tech Central, right?
Sunnyton.
Good, good. So going forward, what companies do you see really setting the stage for China innovation, and which ones do you think are going to be successful in the US market? Is Alibaba going to blow everything open for all the Chinese companies up and coming in the US market? What do you think the prospects are for Chinese companies entering the US market? What challenges do they face?
I think there are a lot of opportunities they can tackle. I call the Alibaba, the Tencent, Baidu of the world, the new Asian tigers. They have the capability to build a global business, and they are 8 million sellers on Tmall alone, and most of them do not sell outside of China. Yet their goods that they sell is every bit as good as Walmart. So why let Walmart be the middleman and take a huge cut? They should be selling directly into users worldwide. So I think Alibaba through AliExpress or other business they're building in the US like 11 Main could play a meaningful role. And you also have the Hawks, the guys like Hearst and Wish that are from here with first generation immigrants, have been here for 10 plus years, have had PM experience in Yahoo and Google, come up through the ranks, prove themselves, know the US market, but at the same time still have ties back to the homeland, whether it's in Europe or Asia, to leverage the resource worldwide to build global business. So I think both will do, both type of companies will do very well.
Do you think e-commerce, you mentioned Wish, which is in the e-commerce business, based here in San Francisco, and you've invested in that company.
Right.
And do you think e-commerce is one of the most potentially good opportunities?
Absolutely, because China is the manufacturing center of the world. You have 8 million sellers, and they have all sold online before, and through Alibaba, through Wish, through others, they will be able to sell on a global basis. And even something like the virtual currency model, like what YY, and which is a GV portfolio company, and Tencent are doing in China, I think have a market outside of China, which I hope Kurt's Voice will take advantage of.
Okay. People talk about the innovation, product innovation, but there's also a lot of business model innovation. From your portfolio companies, Geoff, are any of your companies actually looking at the kinds of business models that are coming out of China and saying, wow?
Sure. I mean, you look at where there's a lot of adoption and a lot of behavior, and you try to decide whether or not that can be applied, here. Hans mentioned it. I mean, I really think the whole virtual goods, virtual currency was a copy from China or copy from Asia model that was brought, to the U.S. and made very successfully. I think a lot of the popular social games, in terms of maybe not a monetization model but a usage model, was also a copy from Asia, type thing. The farming games, in particular. So I think that's already happening. I think that there's probably still more that's going to come, particularly I think on the commerce space and also on the messaging space. I think we have, the U.S. messaging companies have tended to be more vertically focused on doing one piece of messaging really well, and I think there's a lot to be learned from what we talked about WeChat before, but I think there's a lot to be learned by kind of what the interactions are and what how usage is on that, and how good a unified messaging system can be.
How do you think the Alibaba IPO is going to come over in the U.S.?
Well, I think firstly, I think there's, you talk about, is Alibaba going to, are there going to be a lot of other Alibabas? I mean, the reality is, there's kind of one Alibaba. I mean, hopefully there'll be more behind it, and hopefully some of them will be ours. But the reality over the short term is there's one Alibaba, right? There's only one largest, tech IPO in U.S. history. Yeah. I think it's going to be received really well. And I think the worry is more, is it going to take some of the air out for the rest of the ecosystem, for the other, Chinese IPOs that want to come, because it's so big, and it'll suck up a lot of allocation that managers, have. But I think it's a really important milestone. I think it's going to be extremely well received. I think they're being very careful because there are a lot of issues, including regulatory issues that they want to get done. The latest I heard is that it's probably shortly after Labor Day. I know there was a little bit of a rumored fixation with coming on 8/8. But I think it'll be very successful, and I'm hoping it's going to spur more interest rather than suck the oxygen out of the environment.
Yeah. Do you think Jack Ma will be regarded like China's Steve Jobs?
Interesting. Have you heard that comparison before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think
there's only one Jack Ma, and there was only one Steve
Well, they're definitely different characters.
Yeah, I think Alibaba is an amazing commerce company. I think you'll also see Tencent and Xiaomi and others going to be great at making products. And if you look at WeChat versus WhatsApp, it's a very, very different experience. WhatsApp is very clean and very focused, and WeChat wants to have you do everything in your life on WeChat. So it's a very different way of building product. So I think highly of Ali. I also think highly of Tencent. I think Xiaomi has a very interesting. I don't think anybody's Steve Jobs of China. Steve Jobs is amazing. What he has done with smartphone and iPad changed the world.
Yeah.
But
how about Li Jun?
I think Li Jun is amazing, but I think he himself would say he is not a Steve Jobs of China. So I think it will be very interesting to see different people doing different things, but it's exciting.
I will say, though, that the talent in China is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. And I think that if people think of China as only a place for low-cost engineering or sustained engineering or sort of low-tech work, then they're sadly mistaken. China graduates 600,000 engineers every year, 10 times more than we do in the States. When I was at Microsoft Research in Beijing, it was the #1 lab in the world for Microsoft in terms of patents filed, papers published, technology transferred back into products. It was more productive than Cambridge, Silicon Valley, and the Redmond headquarters. So I've always thought of China as a place for fantastic innovation, and I think we'll continue to see world-class entrepreneurs come out of China.
But yeah, and Eric, you're just, I think, referring mainly to skill base, but there's also kind of the cultural mindset and the work ethic that is unbelievable. I mean, the mindset of people there willing to, give it a gamble and go for it,
Yep.
coupled with people that have really a tireless capacity and culture for work and doing whatever it takes. It's kind of a hard thing to bet against. And even in larger companies, that are quote unquote successful, I find the senior management, the amount of hunger and the dedication and the fact that they're on a outright mission to succeed over the long term, and they're not resting on their laurels. That's different, and it's what a lot of larger companies here fear, and what companies that are trying to maintain. I mean, you look at kind of the way Google has kind of evolved. They're really trying to maintain the lean
Yep.
startup entrepreneurial feel,
Yep.
and it's not easy.
Not easy.
And there, it seems like kind of a cultural norm. And if you're a U.S.-based shareholder, I think it's very scary. I mean, you hate to compete against people who have a lot of knowledge, are willing to take risks, and have an endless capacity for work. I mean, that's kind of a tough combination.
No, I agree, and the only way to really fully grasp it is to go
Be
there
there.
and see it yourself.
Yeah.
And hopefully makes the U.S. companies better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.